Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bigger Vision Show. Got Chris Garrison here, and I am here with Scott Hanis. He is with HR Solutions out of Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, right, Scott?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And Scott is going to give us the down low on how to hire, how to retain, and how to fire. That is one of the biggest topics right now with businesses. His background, I'll let him give the real details on it, but his background is taking, he was in the mergers and acquisitions side of things, and he would go into these corporations, these massive companies. They would flip them per se by changing processes, procedures, personnel, and then they would put them back up for sale for quite a good profit margin on the back end after they got this business perfected. So kind of like what we do in real estate with flips. They did that in businesses. Since then, he's come off on his own. Scott has actually come in and helped coach Absolute Cleaning and Restoration and helped us get some of our internals and processes perfected. He still is a resource for me to be able to reach out to. So very looking forward to this. This is live on YouTube, my LinkedIn page, my YouTube page, and our Bigger Vision Facebook group, which is a free group. So if you're not watching on the Bigger Vision Facebook group and you're on Facebook, then please reach out, plug in. We've got great content like this that drops all the time. So Scott, tell us about, I know I highlighted, but tell us about what you do and currently and where you came from so that people understand the credibility that you bring to the table.
Absolutely. First of all, Chris, thank you very much for letting me jump on with you. I definitely appreciate it. So I own a company, as Chris said, called Fortitude HR Solutions, based here in Cleveland, Ohio. I left the corporate world back in June of 2019. Prior to that, I was a vice president of HR for a private equity group. I also did international HR stuff in Brazil, Mexico, and the U.S., and led teams of up to around 1,200 employees, and putting in best practices from structure to people to systems, and really just helping organizations run more efficiently. How do you build a high-performing team? What do you want to look for when you're doing succession planning, high potentials? What does your performance management system look like? And, how do you, again, continue to retain that talent? That's the big thing that's going on in this economy that we're living in today. It's you've had the great resignation that happened last year, and people were leaving left and right for, some crazy dollar amounts with people getting, bigger job offers. So it really comes down to, how do you retain your talent you currently have? And so the company that I own, Fortitude HR Solutions, we do HR consulting with clients all through the U.S. We also do recruiting services, and my main job is I just want to help people, so HR is the way I provide for my family, but I just love people and I love helping people. So that's a little bit about me. I've been in HR now for about 16 and a half years, and, been, grown from the weeds. I got thrown into an HR position. Chris had a family owned business with about 300 employees. They didn't have an HR dedicated person, and just learned everything kind of through the fire, as they say, and did everything from, writing reviews to hiring people to the corrective action discipline with employees to writing a handbook, to, getting into some small acquisitions with that company on smaller organizations. And then from there, I got an opportunity to work for a larger organization in Cleveland, where I was a regional HR manager. Was there for about 15 months. Quite frankly, got bored very quickly because I went in and I'm a fixer by nature. So I wanted to find out what the issues and problems were. When you have an HR office that has a buzzer and you have to be buzzed into the office, that's really a bad environment. So got rid of all that stuff, made sure that the HR department, we were more focused on the employees and walking the shop floor. And I got two big ears that stick out for a reason. So making sure, doing a lot of listening and just finding out, what's important to the employees, and then figuring out how the employer or the company can meet their needs. And then I got recruited out of a company, Chris, out of Germany, and became a director of HR for a location here in Cleveland, Ohio. And after about 2 years of fixing that organization with my team, I've always had a great team of people. That's, I think, key in anything in business. And with that, then I got an opportunity to work in Mexico. I also got an opportunity to work in Brazil and became the director of HR for the Americas team, and did a lot of merger and acquisition stuff with one of the parent companies that we had involved, and got to go look at organizations, whether they're, what the due diligence process looked like, but also the valuation of the company, very similar to like real estate. And then after about 5.5 years, got an opportunity to be a VP of HR for a private equity company. So that's been like my career history. Always, wanted to challenge and learn more and grow more as a person. And so I've kind of done that through my career. And then in the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, wow, it's crazy, time flies. Just doing it for other, smaller business owners throughout the U.S. and just helping add as much value as I can. So again, appreciate the ability to be on here today with you, and whatever questions you have, I look forward to the discussion today.
Man, yeah. So we have probably a fairly broad range of individuals watching. Your solo entrepreneurs, your brand new startups, and then I'm sure we probably have some multi-million-dollar company owners and management that's probably viewing as well. So I want to start off extremely basic with this first question. Give us a basic structure of what a business organization structure looks like.
As far as personnel goes, like with an org structure?
Yeah, it just in like if someone said, Scott, in words, tell me how so that I could visualize what a business structure would look like. So what I'm thinking is how do we flow through that business in a personnel situation? So an organizational chart, I guess, is what I'm asking you for.
So again, it depends on the size of the company. And as you're a smaller company or you're a solopreneur, at the top, you always have the president and the CEO. And underneath that, you're going to have your next level of management or leadership. It might be a CFO, a chief financial officer, it might be a chief operating officer. And then you may have like a chief HR, human resource officer, or they could be vice presidents. And then underneath that, there's usually another level of management, like your mid-level managers. And then you have your other team members. And that's in a very large organization. In smaller organizations, Chris, in my opinion, especially as a solopreneur, you're going to have your name in every one of those boxes, whether it's, HR, whether it's sales and marketing, whether it's accounting, whether it's, acquisitions, which is part of sales and real estate. And it's going to be a little bit less of a like structured environment. But as you grow, like to me, and I know you didn't ask this question, but I'll just share my input. The more that you can take off of your plate as a solopreneur, and you can create revenue generating opportunities, and you can spend your time working on the right things. I kind of quantify things in buckets of time, right? Is this something a $10 an hour task? Is it $100 an hour? Is it $1,000 or is it a $10,000 task? And so as a business owner, we should be looking at things that are $1,000 and $10,000 tasks. And so, for example, if we are, posting things on social media, that might be a high and best use of our time, but we can outsource that activity for a small business and we can have someone else do it, or we can go hire that function. A lot of times, like people ask, Scott, what's my first hire look like? It should probably be an assistant, or it should be somebody to help you generate revenue, whether that's a marketing person or a salesperson, because revenue is going to solve all your problems, right? If you're bringing more money in, you can then hire more people, and then that will free up your time. I think there's this big misconception, I think, in a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with, Chris, and just in general, that once you hire somebody, you can hire them, you can leave them alone and never talk to them. That is totally not the case, right? Whether you have a high-performing A player, rock star, whatever you want to call them, or you have an above average employee, you still got to make sure you're spending time and communicating with them. And so I know with your company, like we talked about, like I love the format where you have a daily huddle meeting, you have a weekly team meeting, but then you spend time at least once a month with each employee. Again, I don't care what level they're at. I don't care if they're a rock star, if they're not a high performing person, but you ask them, okay, what went well in the past month? What do you need help from me on? What resources and tools are you missing? How are you performing against your goals and objectives that we sent out for you? And then just listening to what they have to say. I think there's a lot of power in that. Like I have an employer group I work with down in Georgia, and the owner asked the question to one of his employees, and we found out like 5 like awesome revenue generating ideas that we weren't even thinking about. So when you have a team of people, they should be empowered to own that role, but also to be able to come up with ideas for collaboration and ideas for improvement. If you, again, you heard this saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so again, it's that 1% model where every day we're trying to get 1% better each day. And that's way off topic, Chris. So I'm sorry, I'm an HR person.
No,
so I can go into a lot of details, but I think again, your basic structure in an organization, you have somebody that's leading the charge as the president, the CEO, and then you're going to have a role for accounting or finance. You're going to have a role for sales and marketing. And then depending upon how large you are, you might have a role for operations, and you may have a role for, the HR thing. Although the HR bucket can sometimes fall under the operations person, or it can fall under the accounting. It really depends on, how the company's structured. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I think the big thing in any organization, you have to have clear objectives. You have to have clear roles and responsibilities, because if you don't have that, like, to me, that's just chaos, right? Everybody's trying to do everybody else's job. And then we're trying to figure out, well, Sally didn't do this, but Billy did this. And they're always trying to one up each other. If everybody owns their role and their responsibility, and if everybody knows their place in the organization, it's going to make it for an easier communication flow between everybody on the team. But then also, as you build your org structure and you have the hierarchy, hopefully you're going to have roles where if somebody gets hired in, like, for example, as an assistant, if they're really good at, dealing with people and they know how to close people and sell, they might move into an acquisitions or a sales role. If somebody's really good at, like a lot of times in an assistant role, you may have somebody doing bookkeeping and they may be paying bills or doing collections or whatever. They may move into a bookkeeper or an accounting type role. So there's opportunities for growth. When you hire your first employee, hopefully you're not going to pigeonhole them into one place. Hopefully there's a room for them to grow within your organization, at least 1 or 2 levels above where you bring people in. If you don't do that, to me, especially in this environment, Chris, I think that's a big mistake, because at the end of the day, people don't want to be necessarily, an assistant maybe the rest of their life. They want to have room for growth. And this is where it's our jobs as leaders. We got to ask people, what motivates you? How do you like to communicate? How do you like to learn? Where do you want to be in the next couple of years? And it's our job to help motivate them and get them to those next goals that they have in their career.
That's good, man. So you actually hit on several questions. So they're going to get re-asked so you can dive deeper into it. So I guess I want to roll into the next question, which is just simply, when do I think about hiring someone?
I would ask yourself, how many hours are you working? Are you happy? Are you miserable? Are you working 100 hours a week and you feel like you're killing yourself and you have no time for anything that you love to do outside of work? I mean, let's be honest, when you build a company, it's a grind, right? And no one can tell you, I'm only going to work 40 hours a week. That's just not possible, right? Especially when you're starting out. So I think once you realize what your potential issues are in your business and where things that you love doing and things you don't love doing. Like, if you remember, Chris, we filled out the task responsibility worksheet. We monetize, is it a $10, is it $1,000 activity? And if it's a bunch of $10 an hour activities, I should be outsourcing those or having someone else do it. And I can create a role based upon those activities as part of my job description for that employee. And then I would say, again, the other thing that I think comes into play with that is just making sure that, that person that you're bringing on, like, it's not a $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 investment all up front. You're paying for that person, every other week, every month, however you do your payroll. And if someone's not consistently performing, again, it's our job to coach and document and make sure that we're following a process. But you may only need to keep that person for 3 months. If somebody is performing, then you're getting your value. They're going to be worth their weight in gold, or they're going to be worth at least 2 to 3x of what you're paying somebody. So I think sometimes we get it in our head, oh, I'm going to have to pay this person $50,000. Well, to me, that's kind of crap. At the end of the day, if they're not performing, you're not going to keep your underperforming employees, right? But it's our job to make sure we communicate, and because people either live up or live down to expectations, right? That's a Scott Hanis phrase. You can feel free to use it. Just give me a little credit. We either live up or live down to expectations. And so at the end of the day, if we don't, again, give them their clear lane, we don't give them job duties, tasks, we don't write their job description, we don't empower them, and we don't give them the resources and tools to be successful in the training, that's on us. We failed them as their leader all day long. So it's really important that we do that. And if we've done that, again, they should be able to, make sure that they're making an impact in our business.
Yeah. I agree 100%. So let's say we've hired that person. Mm-hmm. We've decided, man, I'm working 80-hour weeks. I'm tapped out in my resources. I know I can grow, but I can't grow because I have no more time available for me. Whether it's a small business with just one person that started a business, or there's 20, if that person's feeling that way, then a hire needs to happen. So we made the decision to make the hire.
Mhm.
Where in the world do we find these applicants? How
Yeah,
do we solicit for these?
that's the $10,000 question everybody wants to know. So to me, it's not a one-phased approach anymore. Like in the past, you could put it on Indeed and you probably get a ton of resumes and candidates that apply. To me, it's, you hear the saying, and this is another Scott Hanis quote, always be recruiting. Just like you hear always be closing, always be selling, always be, closing, always be recruiting and sharing the information. So to me, it's a multifaceted approach. So you can post your jobs in all the job boards that you want. Indeed, Wise Hire, LinkedIn, you can post stuff on. You can post stuff on Facebook. You can do a Facebook jobs page. That's just one step. The other big thing is I like to ask people for referrals. I like to share with my network, even on social media. Social media is such a powerful tool. There's a lot of negative things with social media, but there's a lot of positive things. And one of those is going on doing like this Facebook Live, or do like an Instagram story or a reel and share with what everybody, hey, we're growing, we're expanding, we're looking to, add on another team member. Who do you know that we should be talking to? Send them our way. So I think you have to do that approach. I think you have to do the employer referral approach. I think you have to, depending on the role or the position, Chris, you can go and you can talk to like different trade schools. If it's a, more of a trade position, you can get in. There's a website called Handshake. Handshake is where a lot of college and universities use. You have to get set up as a user. It's a little bit of a pain. It doesn't always work the best, but Handshake's another approach where you could talk to kids that are in college that are going to be graduating soon, whether you're looking for an intern, whether you're looking for a full-time person, maybe right out of college that you can groom and kind of mold into your company. So that's another place. You could use a recruiter, someone like ourselves, help you find the talent. Like we use for our recruiting, we use a lot of those same methods, but then we have resume databases that we pay for. We do a lot of cold calling. Like if, let's say let's say you own a company like GM, General Motors, and we want to go source somebody who's got experience and talent working in the automotive industry. I may call people that work at Ford, right? And I'll pick up the phone. I'll start cold calling people, talking about what my company's all about. What is the opportunity? Are they happy? Are they interested in learning more? So sometimes we got to get out of our comfort zone. Nobody likes doing that. But that's another way to potentially find talent. Chris, it's been crazy. Like going to a restaurant down in Florida. I remember talking to a waiter at Outback Steakhouse. The person was working 3 jobs, having a hard time paying their bills, didn't have health insurance. They were really, really good at what they did. They provided excellent service. They were really good at communicating. I think they had 10 or 11 tables the night that I was there. And so I asked the person, I said, "Are you happy here?" They're like, "No, not really. It's just a way to pay the bills." And I said, "Why don't you come see me tomorrow? I'm going to be down, like 2 miles down the road. I'm an HR executive for this company. And why don't we do an interview and see if you might want to make a change?" So I think sometimes it's just simple as that, having a conversation, finding out what's there. You could do, again, besides the school groups, sometimes there's local church groups you can reach out to that maybe run employment, groups or boards where you can ask people if they're looking for jobs. It's just about connecting and telling people what you're looking for. The Indeed and the Wise Hire and the LinkedIn, those are really good ways, but again, you can't just do one thing anymore. You really have to share that. And really when you're sharing those things, Chris, you got to talk about your culture. Like I know at Absolute, that you and Christiane, you guys have an awesome culture. You have great people that work for you. You got to share those things. You got to talk about what is your culture all about? What makes you guys different? You guys do a great job of that on Facebook. Like I've seen you guys just went out for like a team lunch. That was really cool. You got to share those things so people know, right? Because people are attracted. Like they don't want to go work, for a horrible place that has a poor work environment. So you got to share what you're doing. You got to give yourself some credit, and a lot of small business owners don't do that, or they don't think they have the time to do it. But that's a big draw and attraction for people. You've heard the saying, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their boss, right? I would say the same thing for their environment. How are they treated? Again, like with your company, I know, Chris, because we did it, but we put together, there's like a pay for skill performance program where someone gets hired in here, they have an opportunity to move to here and then here, and they're making more money. People want opportunities to grow. Like people don't want to be stuck in a $12 an hour job the rest of their life. At least I wouldn't want to. And maybe there are people out there that do, but understanding that I think is a really important part. And then, you just have to it's constantly recruiting. Again, I don't care what position it is, what industry. Some are easier to fill than others right now, but you have to constantly be recruiting.
So those are great answers, man. That was a lot of different areas that we can tap into. I know one thing, that's a pain point for everyone. It's even been a pain point for me, and I had to ask myself, at one point, what am I doing? What are my efforts in trying to recruit? Because I'm over here whining about the job labor pool, but where are my efforts at? Am I really showing that I'm hungry for a new hire?
Mm.
Based off my efforts. So that kind of leads me into, now that we've got some applicants and we're starting our interview process. This has been a very big struggle for me personally, as well as an owner of a company. How do we identify the ideal candidates once we've got those applications in?
So to me, it goes back to your values and your culture you've got created. Again, depending upon the role. If it's a very
Mm-hmm.
technical role that somebody has to have specialized education or work experience, that's a different thing. But if it's something that we're willing to train and teach people on, I care about cultural fit more importantly than most things. So again, what are my values, my guiding principles that we operate on? I want to make sure that those candidates align with that. That's number one. I also want to look at their experience. Does the experience match up? So, for example, out of all those marketing channels we talked about to try to find talent, let's say we had 100 people. What your job as the owner, or if you had a recruiting company or whoever, our job is then to take that and pare that down maybe to the top 15 based upon their work experience, based upon the job description that we've created again with the roles and responsibilities, and then figure out who we're going to bring in for the interview. And then from there, to me, there's a multi-phased approach. Again, another approach when it comes to recruiting and interviewing. And that's, I usually pick up the phone. I'll do a phone interview. I usually will talk a little bit about the company, share with them, ask them what their pay range, is that they're looking for. Because if someone wants to make $100,000 and our budget's $50,000, I'm going to kindly tell them, hey, like we're only going to be able to pay up to 50 grand. You have opportunity to maybe earn more, but it's going to take a little bit of time. We got to see some proven results. And then we may end the call and say, this just isn't a good fit. Usually the candidates will tell you that all day long, right? Based
Yeah.
upon, the salary requirements. But then, I'd like to do a lot of behavioral based interview questions. So I don't focus on yes or no's. For example, when it comes to the values and the culture. So let's say teamwork is one of your values, right? And I remember your values, but we don't need to talk about your company unless you want to. But like, I know you have an acronym that you use, right?
Right.
And so if teamwork is one of yours, which I believe it is, I want to hear, candidate Sally or Billy, tell me about a time you've displayed teamwork in the workplace. What did you do? What happened? And what was the result? I want to hear quantifiable things. I don't want to hear about, oh, I'm a good team player. Anybody can say that, right? I want to hear
Right.
a good, solid example. And usually you can tell somebody that's making something up and somebody that is telling the truth. Now, I've got a little bit of advantage. I've interviewed a couple thousand people in my career, so maybe I'm a little bit more comfortable. But, it doesn't matter how many people you interview or what your style or your approach is, Chris. Like people can still bamboozle you, right? They can still
Mhm.
bamboozle me at the
Sure.
end of the day. But I think this is why I like a multi-phased approach with interviewing. So we do these behavioral-based interview questions. We talk about the culture. We talk about, okay, tell me about a time you made a pretty bad mistake in the workplace. What did you do? What happened? And how did you correct it? And have you made that same mistake again? Tell me about, your strengths. What are you going to bring to the table? Talk about your areas for improvement. What are you doing on those areas for improvement to continue to get better? Like I want to hear about some of that. Some of that's a mindset thing, right? I mean, are they taking ownership and onus of their weakness or their area for improvement? Like one of mine happens to be time management. I'm not the best at time management, and part of that is because I want to give, and give. So I'll do things that don't pay me any money or that aren't really value add for my family. But I
Yeah.
just like helping people. Like I took a call today at 2 o'clock. I spent 32 minutes with the person. I'm not going to get paid for it. That's okay. I enjoy giving back, right? So you have to know what's important to you. That's part of that's a whole nother discussion, but about what your values are. But once you go through and you ask these behavioral based interview questions, then you may bring that person in, do a face-to-face interview. You can do that whole behavioral based thing in person, but I like to get other people on the team. Like in your situation, Chris, like you could have Christy be a part of it. You can have a couple of other team members be a part of it. You have to train them though, as the leader. They have to make sure they know what questions are illegal and what is illegal. So like you can't, for example, ask if they're married, do they have kids? Got to be real careful with that. But you need to like really focus to their work experience and how they're going to help you bring value to that role or that position, right? And then another thing I like to do is maybe bring them back a second time and maybe this time go to lunch, go grab a cup of coffee, see how they operate outside of the workplace, right? Just to get another thing. The other thing you can do in the interviewing process, and no real estate investors, they love predictive index, the PI assessment. I don't really care for it. I like DISC better. That's just a personal preference. But there's like 50 different personality profiles that are out there. You can do DISC. You can do free ones online. You can do 16 personalities. You can do Hogue. You can do Burke. You can do Myers-Briggs. You can do Strength Finders. But those should be tools to help you make your decision on who you're going to hire, right? And the nice thing is if you have this team of people that's interviewing candidates, Chris, it's not all falling on your shoulder as the owner, right? You have other people and you ask, hey, what did you think of candidate A? What did you think of candidate B? What do you think of candidate C? Who do you think is the best fit based upon these criteria? From a work experience standpoint, those kind of things. And then you make a decision as a team. That usually goes a lot longer, way where those people are going to be a part of the team a little bit longer. And then again, even if you're not the hiring manager, let's say you have multiple levels in your organizational structure. Let's say it's a sales role. The person's reporting to the sales manager. The sales manager should have that final say on if they're going to hire that candidate or not. It shouldn't be you as the business owner, in my opinion, right? And the reason why I say that, Chris, is that sales manager is going to be responsible for the results of that salesperson you're bringing on. They're responsible for the day-to-day activities of what they do. Me as the business owner, I don't care, what they do as long as they get their job done, right? At the end of the day. And I don't know what that salesperson is tasked with. Maybe I don't know all those minutia details. All I care about is that they're doing their job and they're adding value to the team, right? But that's something that a lot of business owners, we got to let go of that control. We got to let our team that we put in place, when you build a high-performing team, you empower them to lead. And, a big area I see a lot of companies really kind of lack on, Chris, is training of leadership, right? They talk about it, but they don't know how to implement it. Like you can have all the theory you want, but if you don't have the practical ability on how to lead somebody in the right manner or how to communicate effectively, it's really, really tough in an organization. There's a lot of chaos usually that happens.
Do you have any resources on leadership training?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on what is your leadership style. I would ask that person that first, right? Like I'm a big proponent of servant leadership. There's a great resource. Ken Blanchard is a good author to follow. You can look him up on YouTube. But it depends on what your leadership style is. That would be one. Obviously, like John Maxwell is like the godfather of leadership. He would be someone else to look at. You can read about like the law of the lids and the 21 leadership principles. Those would be other good things to look at. I think to me as a leader, our job is always constantly looking to learn, right? And we have to if we don't feed ourselves, we can't feed other people, right? And so I know you and I think we're very similar with whether it's a podcast or inspirational or motivational things. I think that's what your whole bigger vision group's about, right? Is inspiring change and inspiring people to do more. So like great motivational speakers, Tony Robbins, that's a name that everybody knows, but Jim Rohn, Rohn, that's a great one. Dr. Eric Thomas, he's one of my favorite. Inky Johnson, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar. I mean, there's a ton of people out there. So you got to find who you resonate with, but constantly feed yourself so you can grow and you can also then share that knowledge and help other people.
Yeah, man, love that. Okay, so we've identified them. Now it's day one for them to start. Talk to me about an onboarding process, because this is something that I lacked. And I kind of have done what you alluded to earlier is I would hire them. I would say, hey, here's what we're going to do. And I would kind of toss them out there. And then I would get very frustrated that they did not critically think as well as I thought they should have, because ultimately I just didn't give them the tools they needed. So what does a good, healthy onboarding process look like?
Can we pause for 1 second and go back to one other thing? So before they even get onboarded to the company, in my opinion, a best practice, business owners are going to do what business owners do. But in my opinion, you write the offer letter, right? That's step one. They sign it. Once they sign it, I always put in every offer letter, and you know this about me, employment's contingent upon passing a pre-employment background check and drug screen, right?
Yeah.
If I have people that are going to be going into people's homes, and if I have people that are going to be dealing with the public, I want to make sure that I'm not opening myself or my business up to more risk and liability, right? So make sure that that's all done. Usually, you get the signed offer letter, and that's when you'll run the pre-employment background check and drug screen. You can use, here's a free resource that everybody can use. It's not free to whatchamacallit, to use it, but it's a good resource. It's called clearchecks.com. So you can run background checks and drug screens through there. You can also do verification of employment, verification of education. There's all different kinds of tools that you can pay for when you're going to hire somebody. So, and you don't do that until you made the offer letter, until they've accepted it. You wouldn't do that on every candidate. All right. So they passed the pre-employment background check. They've done the drug screen. They've signed their offer letter. All that stuff's good. So then the first day on the job, before they walk into your doors, Chris, in my opinion, if they're going to be people that are going to be going out and meeting with people, we should have their business cards day one when they walk in the door. Their computer should be ready to go with the right logins. All the systems and software that we use, everything should be set up. Their email should be set up. They should have, if you have I know you give out swag, and gear for your company, make sure that stuff is there. Really make them feel like they're welcomed, and it's not like an afterthought that I got to go order business cards or I got to set up your computer. Have all that stuff ready day one. And then I'm a big proponent of day one, they meet everybody on the team and they spend a little bit of time with each person. To me, when you onboard somebody, they want to know that they feel welcomed and that you can start having some relationships being built, right? Yeah. The sooner they build relationships with other people on the team, the sooner they're going to know, hey, for accounting, I go to this person. For sales, I go to that person. For something in the field, I go to this person. So it's starting to build those relationships. And I like for the people that have worked for my company to share how long have they been with the company, what do they do, why do they love working here? Just, again, build the relationship and just to get to know each other, right? And then obviously your first day, they should fill out all the HR correct paperwork, your W-4, your federal tax form. If you have state taxes, the I-9 form is a big one that I see a lot of small business owners forget that they need to do. That is establishing eligibility to work in the United States. We have to get that done within 3 days of somebody starting on the job. So it's really important that we do that. And then, the other things like the rest of the week, depending upon the role of the position, okay, from an onboarding standpoint, I would also, if they're going to go out in the field, I'd have them work with, a team crew leader or a supervisor, have them just shadow, see what's going on, look at our products. If I have a warehouse of material, for example, I want them to get to know our products. I want them to look at our catalog of what we sell, what are our packages, all that stuff. So they're well, informed before they even go out. But then I want them to understand the equipment that we have, the safety requirements of the job. All that should be part of the onboarding process. And then you can get into way more details, depending upon their job description and the roles and the duties that they have, to make sure there maybe is a checklist for competency. Do they understand this task? Do they understand that task? And there should be, in my opinion, a 30, a 60, and a 90-day plan for a new hire. What do you want them to accomplish in the first 30 days? What do you want them to accomplish in the next 60 days or in the 60 days? And then when you get to that 90-day mark. And then we as employers should be doing minimum a 90-day evaluation to tell them, hey, this is what you're doing really well. This is where you might need to have some improvement. Here's what I'm going to do. There's some additional training, whatever those things are. But we have to be very intentional. I mean, I think a lot of companies, even big companies, they try to skirt on the training, and training is a very important part, because the more, again, that they know, the more they're going to be able to do to help your company. And so, again, I would rather provide them with all the tools and resources for them to be successful, because it's going to help me and it's going to help my company be more successful. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, man, that's excellent.
But I mean, and then you could get into, again, and I know it's a little bit of a broad topic, but with onboarding, where do we find certain things in the computer system? How do we use our CRM? How do we use our business enterprise software, ERP? What is our scripts that we use? What's the appropriate dress code? All those things should be covered. Some companies I recommend, they don't go out in the field for the first week. I have a couple of companies that do construction. Keep them in the classroom setting. Make sure they're going over those things. You may take them out to certain job sites, but don't unleash them. I mean, you get one chance as an employer to make a good first impression. It's the same thing with your customers and the public, right? You want to do it the right way. And that's where I think sometimes people skip over that onboarding process because they need the body there to go do the work. And then what happens is it causes chaos, or they're not onboarded the correct way. They don't feel like they're really welcomed or a part of the team. And then they're quitting, or they're going to find another job because they're not happy where they're at. So it's a vicious cycle. The roller coaster of being an entrepreneur, right? It goes up and down, up and down. And so it's the same thing with an employee. If you think about it, what's the life cycle? And this is where, again, if we treat our employees with respect, we communicate frequently, we listen. Again, our big ears, my big ears, we listen. Those are things that people appreciate. A lot is just listening and finding out what's important to them and show that appreciation, show that respect. Like handwritten notes. Nobody would want to get one from me because my handwriting's awful. But like handwritten note, like, hey, I really appreciate you did a great job this week. Thank you for all your efforts. Buy them lunch once in a while. Like, just say thank you. Say please. I cannot tell you how many people I go into some of these offices and people are just like, do this now. Like they don't treat their people right. And then they wonder why their turnover is 50, 60, 70%. You can't do that, right? It's kind of the definition of insanity. If you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. So sometimes we got to look in the mirror and say, you know what? Can I change my leadership style? Could I maybe approach that a little bit different? I'm a big believer in emotional intelligence in the workplace and really being self-aware of myself and what I could do better. And so it's really weird. I do that in the workplace. At home, I don't do that as much. So my wife would tell you I could definitely improve on that.
Yeah, I mean, as you're sitting here talking, it's really hitting home with me because what I find myself doing is we will sit here and we won't put enough effort into the always be recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a pipeline full of
Mm-hmm.
recruits. And then when I need someone, it's way past the time of needing someone. So then I'm frantic getting someone in the door.
Yep.
Whether I hire good or not, they get into the door. Then they get thrown straight out into the field. And I give them verbally, hey, we're not having high expectations. We know that you're going to be slow and not just jump on it. So, watch, learn, then you can start to perform. But the reality of it is I worked for a Fortune 500 company for about 3.5 years called CarMax, and they stuck me with a high performing senior rep that was at the company. And I shadowed them for 2 weeks, literally had no responsibilities but to follow them around and observe what they did. And then through observation, I came into questions that I had that I was able to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went into a classroom and got formal training, sales training, because that was my position at the car dealership. And I sit there and I think, well, Chris, what the heck, man? What are you doing? You're not even following what worked well for you and what you've been trained by other individuals. And then you expect a high performer and you never got them onboarded. So, I mean, yeah, it's a domino effect, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If we don't get those pieces of the puzzle put in place, then we do have an incomplete picture. And ultimately it ends up with us losing someone that probably had a lot of potential.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a really good point. And so some of the organizations that I've worked for in the corporate world, we put together like a buddy system, very similar to yours, where somebody was out there and they were shadowing. And again, they had a friend, because think about it, when you got 1,000 employees in a building and you don't know anybody there, right? You don't know anybody at all. Like, it's kind of nice to be able to go take my lunch break and go eat with somebody, right? Like, we don't think about those little things, but those little things add up to a lot of our employees. And so we got to put ourselves in their shoes sometimes. And again, it's a cost to train people, but I would tell you it's a bigger cost when you have turnover, right?
Oh, 100%.
Turnover can be, it's hard to define the exact dollar amount. I usually use like a 1.5 to 2 times amount from a turnover standpoint, especially if you have to hire a recruiter to hire them. You got to pay for the training. You got to worry about lost productivity. You got to worry about morale. So like there's a definite cost to turnover and attrition in the workplace. So if we onboard them right, we treat them right, we have a good culture, and we're all winning together, like no one's going to want to leave, right? But if we don't treat them right, we don't train them, we don't say please and thank you, we don't show appreciation, we give them no opportunity to make additional dollars, like they're going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. It's that simple.
So talk to me about the onboarding process and communicating that individual's role. So like my question I wrote down here is just, how do I communicate the job duties efficiently to this new hire?
So I would go, that job description should be your template and your tool, right? And I know in your company.
So explain what a job description is then.
So job description should be like the experience that you want someone to have, whether it's education, years of working, if there's certain software packages you want them to learn, like most people know, like Microsoft Office or Google, Suite. So understanding those things, and then your essential duties and tasks are kind of like your day-to-day things. I know like Christy and Christy put together a really nice checklist of
Mm-hmm.
things. So having something like that lined out in the job description, and then you'll have other position requirements and skills. At least that's the way I write mine, Chris, and you've seen my format.
Yeah.
And so then I'll put a bunch of those soft skills in there, lives out our company values or our core values or whatever you want to call it. Effective communication, good time management skills, whatever those things are. And then all the job descriptions I write, there's always the little box at the bottom that talks about employment at will. It's not meant to be all inclusive. I always have people sign and date the job description so they know there's some onus there and like accountability. And then there's also the physical demands of the job. And that's there. Again, if you have 15 or more employees, you're subject to the ADA, the American Disabilities Act.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do reasonable accommodations and discussions with people that are your W-2 team members. And then also if you have a workers' comp claim, somebody gets hurt on the job, it's good to, again, have those physical, duties of the job so you can share that with the doctor and have, again, the interactive process to try to get them to come back to work. So when you're onboarding, and going back to your onboarding question, Chris, when you're onboarding somebody, it's really important that they understand their job description and their duties. But then also, again, if you have checklists or tasks or competency sheets based upon what you want them to learn, again, the first 30 days, 60 and 90 days, those are all laid out. I would share that with them like the first day on the job so they know what the path's going to look like. If you have an onboarding schedule, like you mentioned, like with CarMax, this is what your schedule is going to look like the next month. You're going to work these 2 weeks shadowing, and then you're going to be in the classroom. Here's what you're going to learn in the classroom. These are the topics we're going to cover. I always like what you said, and I think CarMax does a good job based upon what you just shared, but always being able to ask the new hire questions and having a resource for them to go to. Again, because let's say you have 1,000 employees, where's the bathroom at? What time do I take my break? That's not always communicated very well in a large company. So even when it's a small company, let's say you hire your first employee. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. Let's say I hire someone down in Miami, Florida, and they're going to work. Well, that's a remote work situation. So then what time are they supposed to take lunch? Is there flexibility there? Like, again, if I don't communicate it, like I failed them as a leader, because then it opens up a lot of gray areas, and that's fine if they do something that's, up to them. But if I have certain expectations in my head about what hours this person's going to work or when they're going to take their lunch break, if I don't communicate that, I've let them down.
Yeah, 100%. It always goes back to the leadership. Anytime we have successes or failures, we can always pat or slap ourselves on the back,
Mm-hmm.
and along with the rest of the company and team members. Most definitely we can't escape that. So, at what point do you launch your standard operating procedures and your key performance indicators in this hiring process?
I mean, ideally, you have them do that from the start too. They should know, again, what is their goals and objectives. Like we did SMART goals for your company. We should line those out. If you don't know what SMART stands for, it's specific, measurable, achievable, attainable, relevancy or result, and then time-centered things. And those can be broken down, in a daily manner. It could be weekly, could be monthly, quarterly. Like if you've read the book Traction does rocks. So, I mean, it just really depends. But they should have those goals and objectives day one. They should know what those are. They should also have, these are the things we're going to hold you accountable to from a metric standpoint. So again, and we have a lot of people might be watching real estate wise. So if it's an acquisitions salesperson, how many calls did you make? How many letters of intent, LOIs did you produce? Those kind of things. How long was your talk time? So we can really quantify their performance. And then the SOPs, again, the standard operating procedures. What is the script, for making those calls? What's the procedure happen when, we have to pay a bill or we have to refer a customer out? Like, what do we do? Those things should be documented. And that takes a little bit of time. And if you don't have those established, you can tell the new hire, hey, this is not established yet. We're still growing. We're still, getting into all these foundational things. But we want you to help us develop these standard operating procedures. You're going to do the role. You're going to know it better than we do. And what we'd like you to do, again, I think when you hear SOPs, people make them really complicated. Like I worked for an automotive company for 5.5 years, and like the engineers would put like the charts together, the process map, and the yes, no. And I mean, sometimes these things were like, the size of a football field, right?
Yeah.
It's just crazy. keep it really simple, right? You heard the KISS method, right? Keep it
Mhm.
simple, stupid. So write down like, okay, if we're going to pay a bill, we do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and so on. And then I'm a big proponent. Take your computer or your cell phone, record yourself talking through that process. Save those, for other people in case there's somebody that's coming in that's new, somebody that goes out sick, somebody gets hit by the beer truck. Like there's always that recorded process that people can look at, and then you'll build up your library that way. Like you don't need to do all this work yourself as the business owner. You can have your team be a part of the solution, but
Yeah.
it comes down to how do you pitch the idea to them. You can tell them, hey, I really need your help developing this. I don't have the time. Like I trust you. I'm empowering you to make the decision. Let's run through it. You write them. Let's meet on Friday and let's review your SOPs that you've developed. So I don't think it has to be overly complicated. A lot of companies want to make them way more complicated than they need to be.
So something that I have, and you've already kind of touched on this a little bit, as I've experienced growing with multiple employees. I call them team members,
Yep.
but for the sake of everybody understanding, multiple employees slash team members. I I found myself not having or finding difficulty to really structure that time and to communicate with all of my team members
Mm-hmm.
and do all of their performance reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So what does communication look like between the team member and its supervisor? Because going back to that organizational chart, I've had to really take a step back and say, whoa, 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 I'm not the one that wears all the hats
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I have people in these seats.
That's
So
right.
tell me about that communication, the frequency of it, and kind of what that looks like when you've got that team member communicating to their supervisor.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that it'd be very similar to what I mentioned before. Like, so if I'm a supervisor and let's say I have 10 employees, I should be responsible for their employee reviews. I should be doing one-on-one meetings with them once a month just to get general feedback and see how I can help them. That supervisor should probably be leading a department meeting that's talking about what's going on. What do we got? What's a hindrance? What do we need help with from the team? Like, they should own that, right? At the end of the day, that
Right.
supervisor should own that. And then the supervisor should report up to the next level. Let's say it's an operations manager, and the operations manager should have a report on what each supervisor is doing and their team. If there's any employee issues or team member issues, any customer things we need to worry about. And then that ops manager should give you like a detailed report on what's going on, like either an overview or a longer detailed report. So you don't need to do everything like you said. Like you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
That's why you have a team of people to do that. And again, those supervisors are going to be the ones that are going to do the reviews. They should be the one, again, that if they're building out their team, they should have the final say in the hiring process. They should be the ones that if they're having discipline issues or there's issues that they need to coach, they should be the ones that are coaching. It shouldn't be Chris Garrison, president and CEO, at the end of the day. Like, because if you start doing that, then you're taking away the authority and cutting the legs off from the supervisor. Because then when there's a problem, that employee or team member is going to go to you instead
Yep.
of going to the supervisor. And I see that happen a lot. And I don't think it's ever done on purpose. I think it's always done in a place of, making sure that people know that I care and I support the team and I want to help. But what happens is then, and you've heard me say this before, Chris, but it's the mom dad card, right?
Yeah.
And so they don't like what Chris said. So they go to the supervisor,
Yep.
or they don't like what the supervisor said. So, hey, I know Chris helped me with this one thing. Let me go ask Chris the same question. And then you give two different answers. Now the supervisor is got to try to handle it and nip it in the butt before it goes to you. But if someone comes to you, you got to say, you know what? Hey, I'm not the best person to talk to. I'm not trying to blow you off, but I need you to work with your supervisor. Now, if it's a harassment claim or a discriminatory claim, that's a different story, right? But if it's a workplace performance issue, somebody only produced 10 widgets and you think they should have produced 15, that should go to the supervisor. That shouldn't be going to you. But
Yeah.
again, the other thing that I recommend that I like doing is like a quarterly team meeting where everybody comes. Everybody comes to those meetings. We give state on how we produced and how we did it the first quarter. I mean, today's March 30th, so we're almost
Mhm.
there. So doing a
Right.
meeting like the first or the second week after the quarter's over and just talking about this is how we did financially. This is how what's coming up in the next quarter. This is what we did really well. Sharing the wins and really talking about those because you've heard the saying about the elephant, you don't bite it all in one bite, it's multiple bites, or it
Right.
takes time to do that. So again, celebrating the wins and making sure that the team feels, again, appreciated, and that they feel like they know that their contributions mean something. So I like doing those quarterly meetings so people get to hear from me as the leader. So we would do, like, we call them town hall meetings. So we would do those once a quarter at the PE firm. At the international automotive company I worked at, we did those once a month. And they're a pain, man. I got to tell you, like, it's because we had 3 shifts working, first, second, third. We also had 12-hour shifts, a day and a
Wow.
night 12-hour shift thing. So we would do like 8 or 9 meetings a month sometimes. And it was between me, the president and CEO, and then another person on my HR team. Like, we were tapped out, man. It was just a long, long week, when we did those
Wow.
employee meetings. But the employees deserve that. They want to hear what's going on. They want to feel like they can ask questions. It was nice because we had people that were always able to talk to us once a month and share kind of what was going on. As I moved up in the organization, I stopped doing them every month. I had my HR manager take those over because I would be in Brazil or I'd be in Mexico, and the president and CEO, him and I would travel a lot together. So then the ops manager took his spot, and we broke it up so it wasn't very monotonous. We had
Yeah.
different things that we shared. So, but that would be another way to like make sure that we're communicating, but you don't need to be doing all that yourself. You can have
So
the team do that.
so daily huddles, first thing in the morning, real short daily huddles,
Yep, 10 minutes or less.
weekly leadership check-ins, monthly
One-on-one
leadership one-on-ones
with your team members or your
with your
employees.
team members that you're responsible for,
Correct.
and then quarterly company-wide check-ins.
Yep. That's my
Okay.
opinion.
I
Again,
like it.
the reason why, and again, it's a structured process, right, with that
Yeah.
communication. But the big thing that's going to do for most companies, Chris, it's going to allow them to know what's going on. It's going to remove the rumor mongers and everybody saying, "Well, is this going on or is this happening?" All
Right.
that stuff goes away. So the more we're proactive with our communication, the better off we are.
I like it. So, what's some things that we can do to maintain these great hires once we finally found them and onboarded them, and we see that they're a great fit to our culture and they're performing well? What's just some activities, some tools, some things that we can incorporate to make sure that they love where they're at?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your culture. So celebrating your culture. I like when like the company values, like on your weekly leadership meeting, recognize somebody from the team that did, went above and beyond or really lived out the value of teamwork or growth or, being resourceful, whatever that is. So creating that type of environment where people are praising each other. I
Yeah.
think doing like, it doesn't have to be every day or every week, but like once a month or once a quarter, throw a team event. It could be a lunch like you just did with your
Yeah.
team, Chris. It could be, do a service project, go serve food to the homeless. Maybe you do a potluck or like a chili cook-off. Like I had a client just do a chili cook-off, and they had a lot of fun with it. They had some top prizes, those kind of things. So that would be one way to keep the team engaged. I think, making sure, again, like the handwritten notes, like saying, thank you or send an email. You always praise in public, and if you got a reprimand or discipline, you do that in private, right?
Mhm.
So make sure you're praising people, telling people what a great job they're doing. Like we used to have a TV board, and we put like employee of the month. We had different things for like somebody like outstanding job, and we had other people on the team throughout the entire organization call out other people for doing something good. We would put that on there. We'd give them like a T-shirt for those kind of things. So you could do that. I think another big thing with like retention, it comes down to doing, your annual reviews, doing your monthly one-on-one meetings. Make sure you take care of people with pay. Like right now, it's a crazy pay area, and like in the labor market,
Yeah.
like people are going and making 20 to 30% more and taking one job from here and going to the other. And so you got to make sure you're being competitive as an employer. Do your wage studies. If you don't know how to do that, like you can do very quickly, go to salary.com or the bls.gov. Those are some free sites that are out there, and you can put in, like HR manager, in the city, Cleveland, Ohio, and they'll give you an idea. It will not be an exact science. There's comp studies that like we pay for, like through Connexa and ERI, and those give you a little bit more detailed results. But with that, know your market, know what other people are paying. And so like what happens a lot of times from a retention standpoint, Chris, somebody, let's say they're making $15 an hour, they can go make $15 an hour now at Chick-fil-A, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm only paying $15 an hour, what am I offering that Chick-fil-A is not offering, right? And
Right.
then it's our job to educate people, right? And so we got to say, hey, we offer you full-time work, you have health insurance, these are the other benefits, paid time off, whatever that is, great place to work, opportunities to, make more money and grow within the company. They may not have some of those same opportunities with like a Chick-fil-A, right? Or they may not have that guaranteed 40-hour work week. So we have to make sure we're highlighting those things. So sometimes I've used like compensation or reward statements at the end of the year to show people, okay, you made $15 an hour. Here's all the money though that the company put into it on top of that, right? There was FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare. This is our benefit cost for medical insurance. This is what we did for the 401k retirement plan. This is what we did for your paid time off, your paid days off. This is what your company paid holidays look like. And we would say, okay, here's what your true compensation was. And so instead of $15 an hour, a lot of times it's $20, $25 an hour, but they don't see all that. So it's our job to help educate them. Now, you are going to have people, Chris, even if you do that, they're like, well, I don't care. I just want the money in my paycheck. I don't care about the benefits and I don't care about all their stuff. So you're going to have that, and there's nothing you can do about that, right?
Yeah.
But again, if you have a good culture, you show people appreciation, you say please and thank you, you treat them with respect, you educate them on some of the stuff that you're doing that other employers aren't, like usually you're going to retain your talent, right? And having an environment where you listen to your team and you have that open communication, like people want to be heard sometimes. And so like even in the corporate world, I had people come in and complain to me for an hour about something, and that wasn't the best use of my time. But guess what happened? They would leave my office, and 9 times out of 10, they're going back out on the shop floor or going back to their job, and they're going to be way more productive because they felt better. Now, it made me stay later because I got an hour of my day that was taken away that I wasn't expecting. But at the end of the day, like, when we have a really good team and we care about our team and we build that right culture, that's really when you're going to start seeing the results of the team, because people are going to run through that brick wall because you know what? They know Chris Garrison cares about them and their family. So they're going to do whatever they can, in order to help the business and help the team out. And so, I think that's another thing, just talking through this, Chris, is that some business owners don't realize the responsibility that they have. When you think about it, and I think you and Christy and I, we talked about this when I was there last year, but at the end of the day, like, it's not just the employer you're supporting them, their family, and so I always have taken that as a big responsibility. One of my old bosses, Kevin, he really instilled that into me back in 2011 when I started working with him. And I still talk to him to this day, and they just hired me to help them find a pretty key role in their organization. So, remember that it's not just them. There's other people in their family you're supporting. And, when they're having a bad day, you always tell people don't bring it into the workplace, but we're all human beings,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's our job to have a little bit of compassion and empathy. Not that we want them to be unproductive because we're paying them for results and productivity. But sometimes, again, a 5-minute, just letting them vent or let them talk to you, that goes a long way with people.
Awesome, man. Dude, I appreciate you running through the life cycle of building a team for a company. It's definitely one of the biggest pain points, I think, for almost all business owners. And then on the flip side of it, it's also a pain point for the team members when they jump into an organization that doesn't understand the process that you just explained. As the last question, because I know we're pushing that hour mark and I want to be respectful of your time. What is, I always like to find out, what is a book that has most impacted your life, or a podcast, whichever, that maybe you can recall and others might be able to jump on it and see if they can receive as much impact?
So I'll be controversial. I'll say the Bible is the book. I mean, like, I'm a faith-filled guy and I believe in, again, I just believe. So without that, like, a business book, Good to Great is one of my favorites. So is 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn. I love anything by John Maxwell. So those would be some of the answers I would give you. As far as podcasts, I already mentioned my motivational people I like. So anything by Jim Rohn, Inky Johnson, Les Brown, or Dr. Eric Thomas. Those are the people I'm usually listening to.
I love it. So how can people reach out to you if they want to reach out and get your services, or just connect via social media? How do they get you?
Yeah, I mean, so Facebook, Scott Hanis. You can find me on LinkedIn, again, Scott Hanis. Website is a long one. It's www.fortitudeHRsolutions.com. And there's a place on there for contact us. And I'm one of those crazy people. I think Chris knows, like, I work way too many hours. And so, like, if I get an email from you, I usually try to respond within 24 hours. That's just a big thing for my service that I'd like to provide.
Very responsive, man. I appreciate your time that you've invested with me and Christy over at Absolute Cleaning Restoration. Appreciate the wealth of knowledge you just gave us through this Bigger Vision show. For you guys that are tuning in, if you're not a part of that Facebook community, Bigger Vision Facebook group, it's free. Plug in. We talk about mindset, business, and investing. We do these weekly lives right here with very experienced people in their craft so that you can leverage their experience so that you can move further in life quicker. Also, if you like podcast, I do have a Bigger Vision podcast that I release every Monday, a new episode. You can find it on all of the platforms. Thank you for your time. I hope you received something great from this. If you've got follow-up questions or if you've got any feedback, please leave them in the comments. I would love to read those comments, and I'm sure Scott would appreciate them as well. Scott, we appreciate you, and to everybody else, y'all live in success.
Thank you very much, Chris.